Thanks so much, Josh. And yeah, I kind of want to get quickly to the discussion part of this because I think this is a topic that we're going to be covering that is on a lot of folks' minds, both in the museum world and in the immersive entertainment, LBE space. So first of all, I'm Chris Weisbart. I'm the Associate Vice President of Exhibitions at the Natural History Museum of Los Angeles County. I have a lot of experience at this museum. I started in 2005 as a technician. I worked here for about 8 years and then left and did my own design practice, multimedia and exhibition design. I worked for museums and art spaces and eventually landed at an experiential firm named Two Bit Circus that you might be familiar with. And at that time, they were creating a traveling educational carnival called Steam Carnival. And I was initially hired to do industrial and interactive exhibit design for that carnival. So I have, like I said, I have about 50 slides, but I'm going to move quickly through them because I just want us to have a kind of open conversation about some of the topics I'm bringing up. There's no, real set answers, but I think I have a unique career path through the worlds of commercial and nonprofit exhibitions, and even some immersive marketing and experiential marketing. So let's move forward. Let me see. For some reason, this is not. Oh, there it goes. So this is our dinosaur hall here at Natural History Museum of Los Angeles. For those of you who've been here, it's a really unique space. It's a dinosaur hall in the traditional exhibition sense. I'm going to use that terminology when I refer to museum exhibitions that are essentially object and label and touchscreen multimedia, film multimedia, those kinds of things. But what's unique about this is there's a lot of natural light. We created some really wonderful displays. Evidence Design did the dimensional design. Kim Bear and Associates did interpret planning and graphic design. And we are very proud of it. It was also the kind of last museum exhibit that I worked on as a technician phase of my career ended, and I moved more into design. And I was the only in-house exhibitions representative other than the project management team, but I was the only kind of technical, carpentry multimedia person assigned to the project. So I learned a ton, and I really, took what I had learned and applied that to my later career in the commercial exhibits world. There's me, a much younger version of me, installing some of the lighting and really really wonderful chance to get up close with dinosaurs, which are one of the points of this talk is to say we have in the museum world, and specifically for me in the Natural History Museum world, these really wonderful touchstones for our audiences. People love the subject matter that we present, but also we are in a marketplace where traveling immersive and experiential exhibitions are coming in and also participating in this. For those of you who've seen things like the animatronic dinosaur shows that travel through town, they are exciting to visitors. Visitors that frankly also are part of the Natural History Museum audience, and it's the novelty of these types of experiences that come through that I believe allow them to garner the $35 to $50 ticket price, per person, per adult, that they're able to get. And that's a very different paradigm than we have in museums. So what I'm attempting to do here is to talk a little bit about, what museum practice is and the key features of the authentic work we do in museums, but also how do we take notes and understand what's going on in the experiential exhibition world writ large. So back to my technical days here, I showed up in 2005. I had worked previously in web development and actually had a degree in design from actually doing letterpress. But because of going to school in the early 90s, I also learned HTML that led to a web dev career, a lot of web engineering, but kind of left that after the first .com kind of bomb happened and looked for new avenues and found the museum where there was just so much old technology that was not working. Most interactives were still run off of Laserdisc players in 2005, even though that tech had gone away 20 years previously. So it was kind of like kid in the candy store. I joked with Josh one of the times when I was initially talking to him that the big innovation that I brought was we could do touchscreens in Dreamweaver and do touchscreen content that was at or above the grade of what was commercially available. And then I got into a lot of other things like fixing animatronics and experimenting with the kind of glut of projection equipment we had. And this here on the right is like a water vapor projection that floats midair, and we had a really wonderful time. We basically had all the equipment from the museum that we were deinstalling and repairing in an old exhibit hall that we called the Bat Cave, and we got to experiment and play around. And it was through that with some colleagues, we ended up giving talks. I did a lot of guest lecturing and teaching on how you could leverage some of the, not only computer equipment that's available, but things like microcontrollers. I was using basic PIC microcontrollers, and eventually moved to Arduinos and those kinds of things. So all to be said that this technical basis, for my experience in museums got me interested in taking the equipment that's kind of readily available and pushing it to new extents. And I think that mirrors what is happening in experiential design, and what has happened in experiential design is it's not just that everyone has essentially had access to high quality projection equipment for the last 30 years, but it's only recently that people are playing with it and trying to put it in the context of the museum style exhibition. And so we had a lot of fun learning and using this equipment, but then also learning how to create design documentation and concept development for museum exhibitions. I took that and did more outside my own kind of personal art and multimedia practice. This is projection mapping. I was able to do a full dome projection, which you see on the right, for a Forbidden Planet night. We have a planetarium over here at one of the colleges, and I got to try 3D. This is a chroma depth 3D, so every color that you're seeing here appears at a different depth. Projection map historic spaces. This is Gamble House out here in Pasadena that we were highlighting the arts and crafts architecture through projection mapping. I also got to rebuild the Antikythera mechanism for Nat Geo channel. At the same time here, and Josh and I also were talking about this, there's a really wonderful opportunity that we have, getting into our career in the 90s until now is the advent of a lot of these technologies, along with CNC machining, 3D design. All of these kinds of things have grouped together and allowed us to push the limits of how we express ourselves creatively. So I think that I was able to work on this really exquisite object. For those, well, I think most everyone knows what the Antikythera mechanism is now, since the last Indiana Jones movie, but it was a clockwork mechanism that was found in the Mediterranean, and it highlighted that clockwork technology and kind of computational use of gears was used hundreds of years before anybody believed that would be the case. So we recreated this using a water jet machine and some CNC capabilities that we had here over at Mad Systems was the vendor that we were working with, and they're big in this in the themed entertainment world and museum world. So yeah, I think that one of the things I kind of wanted to highlight just with this brief background is that not only do I come from design, but I also come from a technology background. And that I think those combined with the types of objects and stories that we have to tell in the museum world provide unique opportunities for this novel approach to exhibition making that the immersive world is highlighting for us. As I said, I worked on my own private practice, but then started working with Two Bit Circus. And at the time, they were doing educational interactive exhibitions, and I was lucky enough to participate with them. I mean, they were having these steam carnivals where they would do wild and crazy things. I mean, these are two Tesla coils that they would have in a stage show that was singing, and also demonstrations of this kind of stuff. They also are famous for music videos. This is the Rube Goldberg machine for the This Too Shall Pass music video. They have this crazy device called the Dunk Tank Flambe, which is a dunk tank that instead of dropping you into, I'm sorry, OK Go was the artist. And this was a traditional dunk tank, except when somebody hit the target with a softball, you were engulfed in flames. You were safely in a fire suit. But this was this really unique, wonderful group of people that I met because of my experience doing what I would call tech-infused multimedia experiences, not quite at the level of what they were doing with experiential entertainment, but I joined and was very excited. It was here's more images of Steam Carnival and the kind of vibe that they were presenting. But at the end of the day, the goal really was to show folks that there was an educational component, which is, again, if we talk about the thematic axes that museum work excels at, it's showing that excitement by engaging with the objects and specimens that are on display can lead to greater insights, educational insights, and engagement with topics. So, each of the components in Steam Carnival allowed for people to understand, hey, you can make this if you know electronics, if you know some fabrications, have some fabrication skills. So it was an exciting opportunity. Very quickly, we pivoted to doing more in the vein of kind of themed environments and using game technology to to kind of network cabinets together and create experiences that combine both environmental design and environmental theming with gameplay experiences. And so these are some initial designs that I did for what eventually became a story room called Space Squad. The idea of these story rooms was that, take, for instance, an escape room, and the ways that a group of people can come together in an escape room and through gameplay get to know each other and have a social interaction. But you do that with essentially arcade cabinets that were networked together. Also, my task as the environmental designer was to make these things create a stage presence and an environment, even if they were dropped into a convention center convention room, so that you could actually essentially create a spaceship out of a series of cabinets. And the idea of the story part of Story Room is that these things could be episodic. How many stories take place on the bridge of the Enterprise, for instance, and by having cabinets that are themed, having an environment that is maybe not themed with wall hanging elements, but essentially put together with lights, go-go projectors, some patterns, you could really create an environment that was convincing and immersive enough in order to get folks playing together and get through. We had an opportunity also to have Tenacious D for their Festival Supreme perform inside this is called Space Squad, and so that was a real fun time for us. I also took on quite a bit of the experiential marketing efforts of the company. This is a projection mapped adult size ball pit that we put together for Major League Baseball's All-Star game. And what was cool about this was that Pepsi was on board. They were interested in it. They didn't know the format that it was going to take up, and it ended up being because it was in San Diego that year, and it was essentially on a street. we wanted to projection map, so we built a blackout tent that this would take place within. We, had trailer style air conditioners out the wazoo because it was a warm summer day that we had this. But it, really wildly successful. It brought in some much needed revenue as we were transitioning the company from the Steam Carnival era to the what was eventually going to be a location-based entertainment venue. We didn't necessarily know it at the time, but we were doing these experiential marketing activities in order to kind of make revenue while we pivoted the company. But it was a very exciting thing. It got a ton of media attention, and it continued the trajectory of 2-Bit being a player in this world of experiential marketing. There's just more images. We had a bullet time camera rig that we had put up there too, so you could share. That was kind of cool stuff. I made a traveling robot bartender that kind of made its way through various. They would sell this. They would rent it to different venues and places like South by Southwest for various parties. But I promise you all that I don't just make things that dispense alcohol, but we are highlighting a couple projects here that do that, and I think that just fun stuff to show. Okay, so the Tequila Cloud is something that Josh has hyped on LinkedIn as part of this. This was a really unexpected project. So the firm Lapis came to us with a client, the Tourism Board of Mexico, and they wanted to create. They had gotten quite a bit of interest and fame from doing these billboards made entirely out of snow. So they would kind of create in cold environments. They would put snow in an arrangement on a wall, and that would be the advertising. But it was really unique and interesting. And they wanted to create a cloud that rained tequila. And so we at 2-Bit Circus said, sure, we could take that on. Initially, there were attempts to atomize tequila into a cloud. You learn very quickly that both alcohol vapor is not visible, and B, it also smells like tequila. So it's just a giant hose of tequila that you're essentially spraying everywhere. So what we decided to do was take the idea and really create an electromechanical device that created what looked like a rain cloud and exuded a water vapor that smelled slightly of tequila, and also created a rain show that where it would rain down into this pool of tequila that would be then dispensed through the tap. And again, this was one of those things where if you want to try to quantify the media impressions that we got and the amount of interest, it was essentially on on the news everywhere. It was the news story du jour for about 15 minutes. But exactly what you want when what you're trying to do in the Mexico's tourism board wants to highlight that they're trying innovative things. Oh, here's the attempt to atomize tequila in our early with our engineers. It's a funny story. The way that we came up with the idea to make the electromechanical cloud was there was a project in 2002 called Blur Building. It was like an architectural installation that just basically was sitting on a lake and used sprayers to create these clouds. And I remember that. So it's essentially that mixed with a cloud lamp with a thunderstorm and a kind of rain feature on there. And this, by the way, was flown to Berlin, and it had to go on a special aircraft transport that had a breech loading nose cone on the airplane to get it in, because it was pretty big. But okay, so at this point, 2-Bit had transitioned to this location-based entertainment venue, and one of the things that I think was really unique and fun about the way that they proposed the space was that they were going to take, similar to those story rooms, they were going to take the mechanics and technology that around game design and game development, but use that to bring people together through experiences. And that was what was a wonderful time at Two Bit Circus, was that we were able to work with engineers who knew different aspects of it. From my standpoint, I became director of design and fabrication. I was able to bring these designers who were also, like excellent carpenters and knew how to CNC machine and vacuum form things and build their own equipment. And that was how we got it done. I mean, it's a 30,000 square foot entertainment venue that we built essentially in 6 months. Which was crazy, as many of you know. But we were able to do it because everybody was so multi-skilled and multi-talented, and we had a lot of fun doing it. Even the design work, which I was responsible for, along with the design group led by Hector Alvarez. We were able to kind of identify what we thought were exciting kind of visual motifs in the space, how that interleaved with the technology and the idea that we could create an arcade that was so much more. And here's some of the environmental design work that myself and my team made. And we wanted to try different things so much. We wanted to make these gladiator pits for VR that everyone could look down into and explore. And obviously, the realization of these had a lot of other constraints. Time was one, budget was another, but the fun and the idea that through kind of this is an event that we would have called beta nights, where we would show have indie developers come. We could show the development of our work, and essentially just have a big party trying out all this stuff and seeing how things break. And that's that, again, if you can quantify it as just the joy of creating things, trying things out in an environment where it's encouraged to be unique and try different things. And this is what we ended up with. We ended up with a lot of experiences that, like I said, had equipment that are available for gaming, but used indie game tech and indie game developers to bring folks together. And at the same time, I, from my perspective as the design director, I really wanted to create these environments that disarm and enable social interaction. You could be in a VR headset, but when you put it on and take it off, you're in the bayou before you go into the virtual kind of raft game where you're shooting aliens, etc. And then we also had these really wonderful midway games that, again, were unique interaction types, using digital tech, but taking some, and as shown on the left, some traditional games, but then allowing them to be gamified in new and different ways. Or on the right, take different types of controllers and allow for social interaction and people to play in fun and new ways. Just a couple more slides. We also did a lot of cabinet design for unique arcade games. On the lower left is something called Button Wall, which is a two-person. It's like Twister versus Twister, where you're trying to hit buttons of your color and compete to whoever can hit more buttons at the same time. And so, again, our teams had a lot of fun developing these. So in 2020, I was hired back at the Natural History Museum, and the thing I want to get to is our conversation is how do this wide range of experiences apply when now I've taken this kind of circuitous path to being an administrator at a museum. I think that the thing that I want to express to you all is that you can do immersive, you can do experiential, and still remain authentic to your educational goals and the goals of most visitors who want to see at the museum the real object. And so here's some ways that we've tried in the last 3 years here to do this. We have an exhibition that's been open for a couple years now called Los Angeles, LA Underwater. And the idea here is that the fossils that we're putting on display, it's a small exhibition space. It's about 1,200 square feet. But the items we're putting on display are fossils that we find in Los Angeles. And aside from the material that's at La Brea Tar Pits, the fossils we find in Los Angeles are all underwater fossils. And we want to explain that to the audience and express why that is. And we also want to show these objects that and educate folks on what a fossil is and what a fossil isn't. And one of the key things we want to show people is that you too could find a fossil yourself in your backyard. In fact, many of the specimens on display were not found by paleontologists. They were found by people digging in their backyard or putting up a wall, etc. But as you can tell by the images, we took a lot from the kind of immersive projection exhibit world and tried to do it on a small scale. I think we're very lucky that we have strong technical teams. That was a kind of tradition from my earlier stint where we hired folks who knew this tech and worked extremely hands-on to figure this thing out. This 1,200 square foot exhibition has a budget of about $200,000, but if you think about that when it comes to the projectors that you're looking at just in this image, it's a pretty good deal. And we have an 11-minute animated sequence that had its own paleo art created and animated. So all of that is pretty exceptional for the price points that we're talking about here. But the unique thing is, so yes, we have large scale spectacle, we have a megalodon tooth, everything on this 4K projection screen is shown at life size when it's kind of front of screen. And so you get to do amazing things like show a giant shark right next to, you see the little brown shark tooth in just underneath the gills there. So you can look at that shark tooth and see the giant shark. But also what you can do is everything that we're showing in this animated sequence has a fossil that's on display in the hall, and you can correlate that. We have timed lighting that allows these things to both line up. If you watch as the whale swims up to that whale skull on the left here, the lights come up and then a call out appears. So we're using the immersive projection to get folks to read label copy, which is always a challenge. And we're doing, a very simple type of AR overlay, I guess, or augmentation, because most people don't know what the heck a whale skull looks like. It's a weird flat shape. It doesn't look like the head of the whale necessarily. So that type of use of technology and spectacle to draw folks in and get some new information. And we're also able to do things like, there was not a three-dimensional recreation. This thing that looks like a hippo with fins on the left, that's a desmostilian. And there was not an animated desmostilian that we could find. So we created it ourselves, and we had a really great time doing paleo art. And I'll show you some slides of that. But when it comes to, using AR tech, we actually did create our own, it's essentially an animated Pepper's Ghost, for those of you who know that term. But I think our teams did such an amazing job of taking a digital file and overlaying it over the object, which is a holotype specimen, which means it's the defining specimen of the species that you see here. And then if you watch it transition, it actually, shows the color and, possible color, possible markings on the fossil, and is really just an engaging way to put context around a specimen. And not that the specimen itself isn't very impressive, but most folks wouldn't get that the organism that lived inside of this thing would look like this. And so there's uses again of technology to infuse technology and experience, I would say, to infuse objects and let folks look at the real object while also giving them some interpretation. Another thing I want to highlight, as you see this image of one of our researchers there, we not only pushed the limits of what the technology can do, but because we knew that these projections and images would be a big draw, we were able to do things like tell the stories of the researchers and change our label copy. I think that it wasn't a causal relationship between the two, but I think we gave ourselves license to try new things. We made the maps very large because it was important for us to put location context for our audience. And we highlighted the diverse scientists, educators that work on the projects and put quotes in their own words. And so all of these things, I think, are also kind of part of the freeing nature of looking how commercial exhibits are trying new things and trying different aspects of putting this content out there. Oh, here's the paleo art, and a lot of this. I will say this is an illustrator and sculptor named Cullen Townsend, who is getting trying to get recruited by all of these special effects houses, but he really wants to do natural history museum content. And he just graduated from Art Center like last year, and is and not only did the 2D illustration, but then developed in 3D. The animation components were done by one of my old colleagues at Two Bit Circus. What's incredible about her work came, I'm going to butcher her last name, but Sulma Nathan. her her work was to take these really detailed ZBrush sculpts and then retopologize them and animate them, and she did it almost as a favor because she was so interested in this content. And so I think that there's a really wonderful opportunity, because there's so many people trained in things like Unity and Maya and now Blender, that we can take advantage of this for educational museum exhibits, and maybe give some respite to folks who are a little worn out on crunch time on AAA game development. um, Another project that we had an opportunity to do is this is the Deep Sea Challenger, the submarine that James Cameron took to the bottom of the Marianas Trench. We had an opportunity as the museum to bring in this amazing object. This thing, traveled to a place that very few people have been, and it was complete. What is a story too? It was completely designed and built by James Cameron and his team, and he himself went down to the bottom of the Mariana Trench. The trick was this thing had to be installed in 6 weeks, and it's this object that can't get wet. It doesn't fit in the building. It weighs like the weight of two fire trucks. And I think one of the lessons I learned from my time doing experiential is that, yeah, this is totally possible. But I think in the museum world, everyone was really flipping out. So I think that the technique I used for this was very similar to what I did for that Pepsi ball pit. Is we erected a truss-based tent structure. We got it permitted within like a week. We brought in the objects. I'm not saying it wasn't an insane project for the teams, and a lot of folks really showed amazing versatility and flexibility and agility to bring it in. But I think that one of the things that museums maybe can learn from the experiential world is what's possible if you have the knowledge of how to execute in a quick turnaround time. Other thing that I really didn't want this just to be a submarine and a tent, even though it's an incredible example of a submarine. So I talked to the folks over at Liminal Space, who do this incredible LED 3D screen tech. And they were very excited because it's James Cameron. Actually, the principals there worked with James Cameron on the Avatar film. And so they were amazing collaborators. Essentially, this 30-foot by 16-foot screen was included and really made the experience. And I think that's, that along with giving folks a chance to see an object like this is a once in a lifetime thing. There's the tent, and you can see it. It's outside of our museum. It was also in the winter of last year, which is one of the rainiest winters of Los Angeles. So it was always a unique challenge. We got to try different things because of the combination of this 3D display and the submarine. We tried things like real life kind of AR, just with the polarized glasses that you got. It's just unlimited success, but I feel like you don't get a chance to try this. Why not try? You have a giant object and a 3D screen. Let's try to overlay some interpretation. Okay, so there's other ways. It doesn't all have to be, massive scale multimedia when we're talking about the overlap between immersive and this type of embedded technology and objects and specimens at a museum. In 2021, a Pacific football fish, this anglerfish, washed on shore in Orange County, and the museum was able to acquire it as part of its collection. This thing is jet black. It's conservation, the conservation team really wanted no light on it, yet we also thought it was our obligation, part of our duty, to put it on display so the public can see this. And so we took a lot of, in fact, some of the vendors that I worked with at 2-Bit, and developed a couple of our own in unique ways of displaying this object. Let me see, for some reason There it goes. So we built a light safe case that had internal LED lighting with a sensor that detected when somebody was standing in front of it. Then the lights would come up 5 lux. The conservation team also wanted it laid flat and submerged in alcohol. And to do that, essentially, you're making it inaccessible for someone in a wheelchair or someone below a certain height to view it. So myself and an engineer I worked with, we came up with the idea of using a pentaprism, which is the device in a SLR camera that bounces a reflection of the image at right angles without flipping it upside down. And so this gave accessibility to folks. It created access to the specimen again, but still, conserved as much as possible things like the pigment and the light exposure of the specimen. Also, access to Unity developers has come in handy many times. But we had an exhibition come in, Becoming Jane Goodall, that was not translated in Spanish. And one of our key values is to translate any new exhibition that we put on, even a traveling exhibition, in Spanish. And so I had a good friend of mine develop a Unity app. Possibly didn't need to be done in Unity, but that was his skill set to do a tablet-based translation. We offered the tablets free of charge. And it provided, again, a value system thing, but utilizing some of the knowledge base from these immersive experiential colleagues that I had. Okay, so now what about traditional museum exhibits? We have this really amazing gem and mineral hall that it dates from the 1979, I believe, is when it's opened, and it has this collection of these mineral specimens and gemstones that are incredible. But how do we borrow other parts from the immersive experiential world and apply that to getting new audiences into our museum? And one of the ways that we've done that is we've really looked for the big swings of like where are the extents of the emotional draw of some of the things we can put on display. This is an exhibition called Brilliance, where we worked with a jewelry designer named Robert Prokop, who was the CEO of the company that provided gems to the Queen of England. So, heavy hitter, and does work that is mind-blowing on so many levels. I mean, these necklaces are the size of like your fist, essentially, and being able to put things like this on display, knowing that there's again, back to that term novelty, there's a new experience that I can have at the museum, even though this is an older exhibition space, but it's something you're never going to see anywhere else, and it's just an incredible opportunity, and not just the wow factor of jewelry or the allure of jewelry. There was some really important mission-based tie-ins. Aaron Celestian, our curator of mineralogy, we have a great film where he's talking about how in these large specimens you actually get an opportunity to investigate things that are trapped inside of them, and because of their enormous size, you actually get a very detailed picture of the early Earth and where these gemstones formed. Also, on the left, what looks like just like a gray rock, that's actually what's called the cloud diamond, which is a 1,138 carat diamond. And something like that, being able to put something like that on display and show it to essentially school groups that are coming in, that you don't get that without partnerships from people who are interested in pushing the experiences of your audience to the extreme. And I think that's one of the kind of value system things that I want to really highlight, is that by taking in some of these techniques and the idea around how we position museum exhibits, traditional museum exhibits, even like in this case, we can really learn something from the immersive and experiential world. Okay, so that was my spiel. Josh, back over to you. Sorry.
All right. Okay, fantastic. Chris, thanks so much. I mean, I love the range of the work. I love the range of your career. So much beautiful, clever stuff. So there were a couple questions in the chat. Chip Sovik had one. Chip, did you want to ask it yourself? Jump camera on, or I can ask for you. Okay. Chip. Okay. So, hey, Eric, what's up? So I think what Chip was actually wondering about audio in the LA underwater exhibit, but I kind of wondered if you could just speak just in general about, the use of audio as a, that's also a medium that we kind of work in. So, how do you
Yeah,
think
no, and I
audio?
apologize that I didn't explicitly call that out. I know Albert, who was on our team for a long time, is somebody who worked on a great many of these exhibitions. Basically everything is fair game. All the ability for us to control these environments, I guess that's why I went so far into the technology kind of piece of the career, is what you basically get when you do that, when program an Arduino for the first time and get that blinky light. If you understand truly what that means, it means you're able to control everything. You're able to control triggering audio. You're able to control like video that also controls lighting, that also creates a soundtrack that follows a person around. So I think that we can talk specifically about the qualities of audio, but I think that one of the things I want to get across is that essentially the environment is under your control with the technology that we're showing. What is the judicious amount that you put in that doesn't detract from those authentic experiences? That's probably a more appropriate kind of discussion here. And I think that audio is one of those great things that isn't can be an interpretive layer and not necessarily take away from your experience of an object.
Sorry. Totally. No, I think it's it's part of setting that sort of theatrical mood, and I would say anybody who happens to be in LA, definitely check out that exhibit. It's a beautiful, beautiful exhibit. So Robin White Owen had a question. Robin, did you want to go ask it yourself? You want me to ask for you? Okay. So Robin was curious about VR in museums, and I know that's actually something that's a little bit controversial. And then, obviously there's a lot of VR in Two-Bit Circus. Also, if you're in LA, check out Two-Bit Circus.
Yeah.
I'm actually hosting my 11-year-old's birthday party there too. Great venue for a birthday party. So can you talk a little bit about VR in these physical spaces?
Yeah, I mean, so this is one of those, kind of debatable components of authenticity versus experiential, immersion. How do we use VR in appropriate ways that still highlights our collection? I think one of the things that you can use VR to do is create very participatory experiences. So it's not just consuming things by interacting with them in a passive way. It's that you're actually able to go and do things actively that you wouldn't get a chance to do. I mean, one of the things that I think would be incredible, we were kind of spitballing ideas, is we have an SEM lab that we installed in an exhibit around that. Imagine a VR experience where you're actually able to explore the microscopic world that we see in an SEM and that scanning electron microscope. And I think that those are the advantages where you are having an authentic experience because these are taken using objects that were using this scientific grade piece of equipment, but then now you're using VR to transport people.
Yeah, and I know that there's sometimes there's concerns about throughput with VR. I mean, it does take a long time to get people on. It's not, you're gonna pack a lot more people into a domed experience than you want a VR experience. I mean, if people, there are a lot of people who don't have access to this equipment.
Yeah, when 2-Bit had to deal with that, I mean, that was a really interesting component of working there is that, these things that you're kind of hesitant about, they just tried it and figured out a way to do it and monetize it. But I think, that's the other thing is that there is always this hesitancy, I would say, in museums to kind of think through all of the ways things can go wrong. And if you did a pop-up exhibit with consumer VR equipment and it didn't go well, what are you out? You're out a couple of $1,000. It's not, I think that's the other thing is that in the commercial world, you try and iterate and fail and do all those things a lot more often. I mean, museums really, because of our limited funding and those kinds of things, we are hesitant. But I think a unique thing about my experience is that now that I know folks that do this stuff, we can kind of spitball and prototype. I know that's something that Blue Cadet does quite a bit too.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that's one of the things I would love museums to take away from this, which is that idea of prototyping and doing things quickly and a little bit looser. I know that there's literally still things in these museums that are done like Macromedia Director because there's a sense that and I've signed some
Smithsonian
whatever contracts which are this has to last for 10 years, right? And you're like, why would you want this to last for 10 years? Because are you crazy?
Yeah.
But anyway, Phil, you had a question. You're on camera. You wanna ask it?
Yeah, sure. So, in your time at 2-Bit, everything at 2-Bit is hands-on, interactive, high throughput, they hope. Everything you showed for the museum was fairly passive. What are your thoughts on putting more interactivity into the museum, including things like um, audience tracking, body tracking, that sort of thing? Or just is there a reason why you haven't done more interactive things? And secondly, the Consumer Electronics Show is going on in Las Vegas right now. What are your thoughts on implementing AI in some way in your museum exhibits?
Yeah, I think so. I'll take it as two part. I didn't show, obviously the full extent. I know it was a lot of slides, but I didn't show the full extent. LA Underwater actually does have a person tracking. So one of the challenges that by trying to solve the problem of costs by keeping exhibitions small, they're not separately ticketed experiences. They're free, but I still want to understand, dwell time, and I want to understand some metrics out of that. So we did install and the company claims it's AI based, but some sort of person tracking system. The thing that we noticed, just not even anecdotally, but just stand around and go to the exhibit, people watch that 11-minute projection show. They watch it multiple times, which for a 1,200 square foot gallery is incredible. It's incredible dwell time. People are looking at it. They're reading like I said, the animated motion graphics labels. I think it's most successful for that. That people are looking at something that tells them something about real objects and in many ways redirects them. So and in terms of interactivity, one of the things I showed very early in that slideshow was the dinosaur hall and its touchscreen kind of interactive components. I am much more interested in experiences, as I said, that garner participation and participatory interaction. Interactives are wonderful, and it's certainly something that museums have a lot of experience implementing. I think there's new ways that we're doing it through sensing of people, giving folks individualized experiences. And once this AR tech gets released in the next couple of years here, we're going to be in a whole different world in terms of how we're interacting and interpreting objects. But I think that's it's unfortunate that I didn't get a chance to show it. I'd love to correspond with you and talk more about how we could do that. But in terms of AI, AI again is just going to be a tool in how we capture audience methods of interaction. I see, and possibly help folks ask questions. I mean, the idealized museum exhibit for me is an object that tells you any question that you have about it to you and allows kind of that user mandated response. That the Wikipedia effect, for instance, where you go down the rabbit hole, and because you went down the rabbit hole, you learn a lot more than just encountering a label that somebody else prepared for you without your input.
Yeah, I love it. I could totally go off, but I'll let someone else ask a question. Goodbye. We'll grab a beer.
Yeah.
Chrissy, you had a question. Did you want to go on camera and ask it, or you want me to ask for you? All right, I'll ask for you. Chrissy was wondering, are there any thoughts on ways to overlay immersive experience through low tech?
Yeah, I mean, that Pepper's Ghost with the ammonoid, I know it looks like it's AR experience. That's a stretch piece of window glazing film that costs like $11 and a projector. What it is it's the animation that was expensive and the time to line everything up and the ability and knowledge to execute. And I think that there are, I didn't show in there, but part of my art practice was teaching folks how to make things like haunted house experiences and those kinds of things. There's a lot of low tech ways to do what looks high tech. I don't know if that's everything you're talking about. I mean, participatory experiences where people fill out cards and hang them somewhere is a very common museum practice. I just think that one of the components of this conversation is how do we garner that kind of audience impact that these immersive shows are doing. And I think that's why I showed some of the examples. But I would say the end where we're actually talking about using the heft of your museum to get people excited about displaying things is another technique that you can kind of leverage.
Yeah, no, I love it. And one of the things I also just wanted to call out was how much your tapping into like other experts, even, you know, and other communities, like even at 2-Bit, like I thought it was brilliant how you were bringing in like indie gamers and like helping, you know, like leveraging them, or like how you're bringing in these like amazing, people who work at game studios, you know, doing ZBrush. Like it's amazing how you're also accessing these communities and, you know, producing stuff that like you couldn't just do in-house.
Well, there's a lot of pressure in a museum environment to be an expert. There's so many experts around, and you want to be an expert. I have built a career not being the expert and just leading teams and getting people excited about it. And I think that's like a really key component of this work is like how do you increase your impact as a kind of individual, in my case now as an administrator, by partnering with cool people and exciting them. I mean, I can walk up to anybody and say, "Hey, you want to build an interactive about a dinosaur?" and people will get really excited. You know, like I think that's one of the kind of secret powers of working in a place like this.
Oh, totally, totally. All right, so we have about 3 minutes left. Are there any other questions that anybody has that they want to throw in the chat? All right. So, you know, we can wrap it, but you know, Chris, one of the things I've been asking our speakers to do is just kind of like, if there's any sort of like parting thoughts. I mean, there's a lot of people here are experience designers, probably a lot of folks that work in museums or for museums. You know, like I guess part of it is like, what do you want to see from the practice? Like, and what would you want to see this community kind of take away?
Yeah, I mean, what I would love is that, you know, the reason I wanted to do this talk is I would love for museums and you know the kind of authentic educational experiences that they create. I want them to have a similar market share to some of the experiential offerings that I see come through. You know, I'm not in any way snobbish about museum work versus, like I said, the animatronic dinosaur exhibitions that come through. I think that there's a lot to be learned from that, and I think that there's something that we can still retain in the museum world, what is important and authentic to us, while still seeing these things happen and wanting to make sure that we're moving along with the flow of time and progress. I think, you know, a great example of this is how libraries have adapted and changed. You know, obviously their function as a data storage unit has changed and is not the best way to do that, but they've really become these community centers. And you know, there was a time here, people might not remember, where like a Borders bookstore was the gathering place and libraries were not. There were crickets, you know. And what has happened now is you see successful libraries are places that are gathering spaces, and they pivoted to that. So, you know, something as banal as a commercial bookstore or commercial entity that then was superseded by online retail.
Yeah.
You know, there's things to be learned, and there's trends to observe and to be open to. So I think that's the thing, is try to be open to different things would be my my impression. And I you know, obviously I want to hear from you all. One of the exciting things about this is you all have boatloads of experience, and in many ways more experience than the things that I was showing. But I want to highlight that kind of collaboration. There's a market here that wants this subject matter. And the more that, I would say, from a museum perspective, the more we can do these things quickly with and infuse that novelty that I'm talking about, the better off we are.
I love it. I love it. And totally believe it. And also, if I can facilitate any introductions too, just reach out to me. I can certainly help connect. And Chris, thanks so much. This was like really a fantastic discussion. Great way to kick off Feature Spaces for 2024. Thank you, everybody out there, for joining us. I think next week we don't have one. You know, maybe I'll figure out something to do. But after that, we're going to have Henry DeBoss from Dog Studio. Runs a really exciting agency, has been digging really deep into integrating AI into their sort of production workflow, doing some really exciting things there. So keep an eye out for that. Again, thanks, everybody. Hope to see you guys again soon.
Thanks so much. Great meeting you all.
Absolutely. See you, Chris. Have a good one.
Bye-bye.
Everybody.